All right. Thank you all for coming. My name is Chris Pulaski. I'm Director of Planning and Zoning for Terrebonne Parish. But in my spare time, I'm also the chairman of the Planning Committee for the Terrebonne 200 Bicentennial Celebration. So I want to welcome you all here on behalf of Parish President Dove, who expresses his regrets for not being able to make it here tonight. So I came in I don't have any Homa gear, but this is the old Pelicans before they were the Zephyrs, right? And before they were that other name that we're not going to mention. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and I just want to welcome you. It's been a great celebration so far. How many of you made it out to the festival a couple weeks? Okay. Yeah. Wasn't that a lot of fun? Yeah, it was. It was. And so tonight, of course, we're going to be talking about sports. We've had other topics throughout the year. And then after this one, we have two more presentations. We have seafood and entertainment. Miss Karen here is in the audience. Thank you, Miss Karen. So there's more to come. Once all of this is said and done, we will have we're going to be publishing a book that sort of recaps all the work that all of these subcommittees have done. And look around you guys. I mean, look at all the work that's been put into this. And I'm sure a lot of y'all in the audience here helped with that. And I just want to give everybody here a round of applause for all the work that they've done. It's fantastic. And this is some of the most, I know for a lot of people, this is one of the big ones that people have anticipated. So I'm anxious to get started. So before we do all that, though, of course, I want to ask everyone to please rise, and we'll have an opening prayer and then a pledge of allegiance. So remove your hats, please, and we'll just say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Okay, and I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. So once again, this has been a long time coming. We've been planning this celebration since fall of 2020, and we've been meeting with our subcommittees throughout that entire time, and a lot of work has gone into this, and I don't want to take up too much more time because I know everybody's anxious to get to see this wonderful film that's been put together. I want to introduce Mr. Stan Gravois. I think everybody knows Stan and knows his dedication and perseverance especially into this subject matter. So it was a no-brainer to ask Stan to head the subcommittee for sports. And like so many of our subcommittee heads, and he's done a fantastic job. You can tell by looking around, and we can't wait to get to it. So without further ado, Mr. Stan Gravois, and there you guys go.
Don't go far, Bobby. First of all, again, thanks for all of you guys coming out for this tonight. And I do understand that they are going to put it on Facebook and things like that. So going forward, the biggest thing is that if we can teach this history lesson, and maybe some of the kids today will have those shoulders to kind of stand on and understand going forward what they can do. I'd like to introduce the subcommittee, those guys who are on the committee that work with sports. First, my right-hand or left-hand guy now, Bobby Arsenault, who was a big help with this. How about a nice round of applause for Bobby? Steve Calderero, wherever you're at, stand up, Steve. Steve worked on this. Steve volunteered to do to read the script and do the narration, and we are so grateful that he was helped with this. We have a young man, Brett Chasson, who has helped tremendously with this, but in case you didn't know, the high schools decided to play a bunch of their football games tonight instead of tomorrow night. Can you imagine you guys out there who played football like in the 70s, 80s, 60s, and 50s, if your coach would have walked in and said, there's a chance of rain at 11 o'clock on Friday night, so we're going to move the game to Thursday? How ludicrous is that? That's what happened. So that being said, Brett is an athletic trainer, and Brett is busy tonight, so he could not be here for this tonight. We also have Roddy LaRille. Where's Roddy? Roddy, please stand up. Roddy's the head of recreation here in the parish. He's been a support. Matt Bergeron is here. He was here. Matt. Stand up, Matt. Stand up, Matt. Matt is a former athlete in the Bergeron family here who was terrific. Matt's dad actually played for the Home Indians back when. He played at Nichols along with his brothers, Ted and James, and Matt actually coached. So we had a wealth of information coming to put this all together. There are a few other people I think it's very important that I introduce in here, simply because as I look around the room, and there are a lot, and I hope I don't forget anybody. It truly would be an honest mistake. But from the standpoint of helping with this and moving forward with this, I work at Terrebonne General. And this took a lot of time, quite honestly. That being said, my bosses gave me that opportunity because they care enough about the community. Diane Yates, my COO, is here somewhere, or she was. Hey, Diane, thank you very much for allowing this. Without what she did, I can't do this. And my wife, who thought I was crazy at 3 o'clock in the morning, looking up stuff at the computer, and she's like, what are you doing? So I appreciate that, her time with this also. A couple of other people who are in the audience here. We have jewels in our community that people just don't realize. I do know, like, instrumental in starting the program over at Ellender Memorial was Ernest Brown. I did see Ernie walk in a little bit earlier. I know they have ball games tonight. Maybe he had to go. Is Ernest here? Stand up, Ernest. Stand up. Ernest, especially basketball over at Ellender, which is just tremendous. Jamie Pizzolato, where you at, Jamie? Stand up. This is a guy who works with the Major League Baseball, and he's from right here in Houma, and coached at the University of Miami, and works as an agent with a lot of the guys in here. We're very happy to have him. A guy who is not from Terrebonne Parish, but I think it's just amazing that he took the time to be here. He was a longtime track coach at LSU. He is a guy who is, again, a wealth of information to track and field athletes all over the world. He's worked with the best jumpers and sprinters everywhere. Boo Shake Snyder from LSU. Boo, stand up. So it's great to have Boo here. Listen, when we gathered all of this for this show today, it wasn't always easy, and there's some guys who stepped up that really helped with this. First, from St. Joe, Gary Louvier, Mike Smith, Curtis Louvier. Thanks, John, for hooking me up with all of these guys. I'm originally from Montague, so it was kind of a thrill for me. I lived next to a guy, Wesley Guillot, back in the day. So that was a thrill, and I'm so happy that they were a huge part of giving us some information here. And to everybody else who did that, because we do have a lot of people that donated. I would love to say donated and we could keep it, but we can't. I would love to find a place in Terrebonne Parish where we could put all of this stuff to be on permanent display. Hint, hint, if anybody has any ideas. But that being said, we have some guys who really stepped forward. To Mr. Wilsie Piku, who came in and did an interview, thank you very much. You'll see him in this in a little while. To Mr. Ed Whiteside, who came in and did an interview. You'll see him on the screen in a little while. To, let me see who else we got here. Jeff W., who, if you want to talk about outdoor sports in Terrebonne Parish, that's your guy. And Jeff gave up time to come talk to us with things that he did along the way. And, a guy that I got to meet in the last couple of years, and I didn't realize how instrumental he was, not only to South Terrebonne High School, but to Vanderbilt Catholic, and that's Coach Brian Gano. Coach Gano's in the back, I see over there. Just a tremendous guy to work with. And you'll see him in the video, too. So these are guys you're going to see in the video along the way. I hope you enjoy this. Just one disclaimer before we play the video. So the first thing that happened is you have to find out when sports started in Terrebonne Parish, right? There was no organized sports in, 1822. So you're trying to find that time. I got a great hint from Patty Whitney. Thank you, Patty. And she said, okay, I found this, read on it. Well, there were 3 newspapers back then. There was the Terrebonne Advocate, there was the Terrebonne Press, and there was the Thibodaux Sentinel. And this was 1887, right? And I'm reading about the first competitive game played in Terrebonne Parish. Anybody want to take a guess what sport it was? Baseball. Baseball. So they're playing, right? And it evidently, and the reason I say evidently, it evidently finishes in a 11-11 tie after 6 innings because rain comes in. The problem is that one of the newspapers said that the team from Houma won by 1 run. The other newspaper said it was a tie. And the other newspaper said it was a tie, but that the guys from Thibodaux were hooligans and bullies, right? So I'm trying to put this historical information together going, I don't know what fake news is, but it's been around a long time. That's 1. And 2, to put 200 years of history into a thing that's a little bit over an hour is impossible. Please understand, there's a lot of things that sort of get thrown at you because it's impossible. It truly is. But we hope that the kids now can kind of look at this and go, oh, maybe I can do that. Maybe there is a future for me in that. So again, we hope you enjoy this as you watch it. When we're finished with this, the agenda has Bobby coming up. Bobby has been a guy who grew up playing TPR ball, who coached since he was in high school TPR ball and now works in the TPR department. He'll tell you a little bit about recreation in our parish. For those of you who don't understand the difference between HARC and TPR, he'll talk a little bit about that. And then the part that scares me the most is a Q&A at the end of all of this. I'm looking at one person saying, keep your mouth shut at the end for the Q&A. All that being said, we had a joy doing this, and we hope you enjoy it also. So without further ado, this is the film documentary related to 200 years of sports in Terrebonne Parish.
With the rich abundance of fertile, fresh, and salt water, one might think that the rich history of sports in Terrebonne Parish has its roots planted in recreational outdoor activities related to game fishing or competitive competition, but such is not the case. Although fishing for commerce was certainly an asset to the early settlers in the parish, and there is no doubt that our early settlers in the Bayou region had friendly wagers on who can catch the biggest or who can catch the most, anglers had to wait until well into the 20th century for sanctioned rodeos and similar events that allowed competition in the event. As a matter of fact, there is no documented activity of competitive sports in Terrebonne Parish for the first 65 years of its existence. And ironically, the sport that is the first to be documented as being played competitively in the Houma area didn't happen until the latter end of the 1800s, and that sport was baseball. Yes, the earliest records of documented competitive sports in our great parish was the Wright Frazee baseball game that was played in May of 1877. The game was played in Houma, although no specific date can be confirmed, and featured teams made up of individuals from the Thibodaux area who came down to Bayou to play the homestanding team from Houma. The Frazee Nine represented the Houma area, and the Wright boys represented the Thibodaux region. There were actually 3 newspapers there to cover the event: the Thibodaux Sentinel, the Terrebonne Times, and the Terrebonne Advocate. And although all 3 of the newspapers could not agree on the final score of the game, they did all agree that the game was halted in the 7th inning due to a tremendous rainstorm. The Sentinel and the Times both had the team from Thibodaux on top at the time of the weather stoppage, with the Times adding that a careful reading of the rules will clearly show that the Thibodaux club forfeited the game by refusing to continue to play. But the Sentinel had the right 9 with a 2-point advantage, whereas the Times stated it was a 1-point advantage. The Advocate had the game as a draw, with the hopes that the 2 teams could meet at a later date to continue the adventure, although there is no evidence that the game was ever officially completed. And so it begins, competition on the Bayou. Our high schools became the cornerstone to athletic competition in Terrebonne Parish in the early and mid-20th century. Although Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, later to become St. Francis de Sales High School and then Vanderbilt Catholic, was our first secondary school in the parish, opening its doors in 1870, the school did not field athletic teams until the arrival of Coach Lucas Buddy Marcello in 1951. It was Terrebonne High School, our second oldest secondary school, which had a rich beginning to athletics. Sports really hit its stride in Terrebonne Parish with the official start of sports programs at Terrebonne High in 1908. Multiple athletic activities were offered to the students of the only high school fielding competitive teams in the parish, thus giving the opportunity for competition in football, basketball, and track and field for the boys, and only the sport of basketball for the girls. Ironically, although baseball was the first competitive sport to be played in the parish, as mentioned with the Wright-Frazee game back in 1887, our high schools did not field the sport of baseball until 1951. In another note of irony, Buddy Marcello was a star athlete at Terrebonne High in the early 40s, and he later went on to start the baseball and all other athletic programs at St. Francis de Sales High School in 1950. The early days of athletics at Terrebonne High certainly didn't go off without a hitch. The infant teams struggled with wins and drawing numbers for each of the given sports, especially football. Track and field was the first of the sports that garnered success, as in 1909, the then called Terrebonne Bulldogs competed in the loosely organized Bayou Conference with teams from Donaldsonville, Thibodaux, Napoleonville, and Belle Rose. The Bulldogs won the conference title behind the brother duo of Charles and Claiborne Duval. Charles led the team in field events and Claiborne in the sprints. It was in 1914 that the Bulldogs hit their stride in football. The squad that year finished with a 3-win, 1-loss, 1-tie season. The only loss that year was a 6-2 decision to Baton Rouge High School. The boys from Terrebonne averaged about 135 pounds, with the beefed-up players playing in at 160 pounds. From its earliest days, Terrebonne was always in the highest classification in the state of Louisiana's high school athletic organizations. Thus, the competition was always measured at the highest level, with other schools being from more metropolitan areas. The first All-Stater from the Houma School was Louis Mohana in the mid-20s, as the school went on to have a tradition of strong football. Terrebonne transformed the mascot from the Bulldogs to the Tigers in the third decade of the century, as the school started to form rivalries with schools from the Baton Rouge area, specifically Estruma High School, and the New Orleans area. The 1939 girls basketball team, under the direction of Mrs. Johnny Stell, was led by captains Kathleen Blanchard and Kate Bro. To date, this team established the most success of any Lady Tigers squad, only losing one game, 25-21, to the Thibodaux High Tigers in the regular season. Unfortunately, the Lady Tigers fell to LaGrange High School, one game short of a state championship. The Tigers went on to field football teams that were always near the top of the rankings in the state, especially the teams in the 40s and 50s under the guidance of head coaches Tom B. Smith and William Buck Sieber, but could never overcome the state power Estruma team, who the Terrebonne team played on a yearly basis in their own district.
In those days, you could play 10 semesters. Today, you could only play 8. When the next school year started, which was 42, they gave me 3 subjects. And then that was my last year. So I finished school in 42. No, 43. 42 was the football season. 43 was when school was out. As soon as I graduated, I made some plans with some of my friends, George A. Baird, who was the assessor for years, a couple other guys. We're going to New Orleans and we're going in. I said, look, fellas, they can't draft me yet. I'm not old enough. I can go where I want to go. So sure enough, I heard about the CBs. I said, I think I'm going to go in the CBs.
But Coach Smith, you can't, the players loved him, man. He never put a player on the field that wasn't the ball player to be there. He no favorites.
Coach Tom Smith was a football coach, basketball coach, and a track coach. We had some track teams, terrific track athletes. We had Ward Bond and Ward Trahan and Billy Yankee and Dale Lee Red. Now, in my senior year, they had the AAU track meet over there. And they had colleges from every place. I mean, Southeastern, Southwestern, Tulane, LSU, and old Tad Gormley, old Mr. Tad Gormley. He worked the daylights out of us because we were on a football team. We had to keep the track. It was cinder track. We pulled that great big old water tank all around that track, 440 yards. And that was, you talk about a track meet.
It wasn't until 1952 that Terrebonne High won its first sanctioned high school state championship, and that was in the sport of boys track and field. Sieber coached the Tiger Tracksters to 46 points to edge out Byrd High School out of Shreveport for the title. Tommy Strait was the Tiger who contributed most. He was a double winner in the 120-yard high hurdles and the hop, step, and jump. The Tigers also had stellar track and field seasons from 1968 to 1972, led by the likes of sprinter Marty Bouquet, jumper Warren Shanklin, and field thrower Danny Martin. But the Homa team could never overtake the dynasty of Opelousas High School for the title during those years. In 1981, the Louisiana High School Athletic Association made a deal with Gatorade and the group that ran the Louisiana Superdome. They started hosting all high school football championship games in the Louisiana Superdome. 2 years later, the Terrebonne football team, under the guidance of head coach Kelly Pugh, had its most success to date, playing in the Dome in the highest classification at the time, the Class 4A championship. But unfortunately, the Tigers came up short against a dominating Neville team from the northern part of the state. Leading the Tigers on that team was All-State running back Tyrone Walls and All-State defensive tackle Johnny Carter. There was certainly individual success at the school, with many of its student athletes moving on to have stellar collegiate and, in some cases, professional careers. Examples are 1958 graduate Earl Groh, the most decorated athlete in school history. He went on to become a dominant running back for LSU, later being drafted in the first round of the 1962 NFL Draft by Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers. Groh went on to rush for over 3,100 yards in the league. And then there is track and field athlete Dalton LeBlanc. LeBlanc was a 1962 graduate of Terrebonne who won an astounding 6 individual state titles as a sprinter and a hurdler. He still holds the 180-yard hurdle record for the state. He set that in 1962. He went on to run track at Northeast Louisiana University, now UL Monroe, where he was an All-American and became an alternate member of the 1968 U.S. Olympic team. He was such a good athlete, he played 1 season of football at NLU in the middle of his track and field duties, and he led the team in receptions, thus being drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in the 14th round of the 1967 NFL Draft. 1978 graduate Gregory Harding was an All-State defensive back in football. He went on to have a short stint with the New Orleans Saints after a productive collegiate campaign at Nicholls State University. And there was baseball hurler Wally Whitehurst. He was a 1983 Tiger graduate. After being named an All-State pitcher at Terrebonne in his senior year in 1983, Whitehurst went on to lead UNO to the first NCAA College World Series for a team from Louisiana. As an amateur, he also played for the USA bronze medal team before being drafted in 1985 by the Oakland A's. He later was traded to the New York Mets, where he had his most successful pitching seasons in his 7-year Major League Baseball career.
Playing at Terrebonne was a lot of fun. We had enough good players that he kind of just so-called rolled out the balls, let us go out and play.
And there is a present Terrebonne alum vying for a roster spot in the big leagues. Justin Williams, a 2013 graduate of Terrebonne, was drafted in the second round of the 2013 Major League Baseball draft. His first appearance in the big leagues was with Tampa Bay in 2018. He was called up for a few games in a reserve role. His most extensive playing time came with St. Louis in 2021, where he had 51 at-bats for the Cardinals. He is now with the Philadelphia Phillies organization in their minor league system. Terrebonne High School certainly did set the pace for athletic success in our parish. Our parish's 2 Catholic high schools in 1950 were the next 2 schools to introduce competitive athletes to its students. But the 2 schools took different roads related to team leagues and structure. St. Francis de Sales High School began competition as Louisiana High School Athletic Association's member, competing in the sports of boys football, basketball, and baseball. St. Lucie Catholic High School was located in the Deweyville neighborhood and was the host school of African American Catholics in the Houma area. They competed in the Catholic School Athletic League, which was smaller in stature and did not compete for state titles. Although St. Lucie competed at a lower level than both Terrebonne High and St. Francis, the school did have very successful boys and girls basketball.
We go to the games and watch the girls, you know. St. Lucie had good girls basketball team, terrific girls basketball.
They also had successful baseball and volleyball programs, winning multiple CSAL League titles over the next 20 years. As a matter of fact, St. Lucie is the first school to play volleyball in our parish. Establishing its athletic programs in the early 50s with the hiring of Buddy Marcello, St. Francis de Sales High School achieved success at the state level immediately.
Bishop Schick was the priest in charge over there. He said, Ray, you know that little school, St. Francis, they need something to get some kids in school. He said, we need some athletics programs. He said, you know, I'm going to be transferred to Houma. He said, look for me a coach. Ray said, don't look too far, because I was ready to graduate. Sure enough, I started it in 1950. And we had a little practice field next to the nuns' living room, like parlor or whatever. And Sister Lua could see out the window. She called me in one day. She says, buddy, I don't like what's going on out there. She didn't like the idea of the quarterback putting his hand on the quarterback's butt, on the center's butt. I said, sister, they do that at Notre Dame.
Again, St. Francis was initially known as Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Academy from 1870 to 1879. The name was then changed to St. Francis de Sales High School, and that name stayed with the school for almost 100 years, when in 1965, the name was changed to Houma Central Catholic High School, which only lasted 1 year. In 1967, the school became known as Vanderbilt Catholic High School and holds that title today. Under the guidance of Marcello, the baseball program quickly established a dynasty on the Class B level, as the Terriers won 8 titles in a span of 9 years, starting in 1953. The school won 8 baseball championships as St. Francis, 1 in 1965 as Houma Central Catholic, and 2, 1971 and 2022 as Vanderbilt Catholic.
I could see this team gelling and coming together, and I basically ended up with a senior infield. And the seniors we had, I think, displayed just great leadership. They took control. We had to make some changes position-wise. During the year, I lost a center fielder due to grades, and we had to make some changes, and the guys just really embraced it. I felt like just very steady. We were good at putting the ball in play and making things happen.
In baseball, names like Harold Haydell, Johnny Bro, Dickie Haydell, Eddie Polero, Gary LeBlanc, David Falk, Mitch Thompson, Harry McCullough, Kenny Hollaback, and so many other All-Staters dotted the rosters over the years. And although baseball was successful immediately, so many programs at the school went on to be successful soon after. After an appearance in the Class A state title games in 1957 and 58 against Tallulah High School, where the Terriers were throttled by a combined score of 51-7, The 1959 program at St. Francis became the first to win a football state championship as they garnered the Class A title with a 6-0 win over Delhi on a rainy November night in North Louisiana.
And we went back and forth on that damn wet field all night long until we threw a long pass to SP, set up a touchdown. Then we made the extra point. They scored a little later. They had a great running back that went to LSU. Boy, he broke up the middle and went about 60 yards, and they didn't make the extra point. We went 7-6.
In 1977, the Terrier football team had a very successful season, battling to a state championship appearance in Class 3A action. But they were defeated in Houma by a very talented Houghton team, 31-0. St. Francis basketball achieved moderate success as Dickie Haydell became the first All-Stater from the school, scoring 524 points in his senior 1961 season. And the Olympic sports had early success, with the golf and tennis programs being very competitive throughout the late 50s and 60s. But the most successful of all programs at Vanderbilt Catholic had to be the softball program. To date, the Lady Terriers hold the state of Louisiana record for most state championships with 14 and most appearances in a state championship game with 20. This is due in large part to National Softball Hall of Fame coach Gerald Albert. He brought the program to its level of excellence, winning 6 consecutive championships from 1980 to 1985.
Nobody wanted to coach it. And so I had to make a decision either to coach it myself or we would have to drop the program. And like I tell a lot of people, that's probably one of the most important decisions I ever made in my life, was to go ahead and take it over myself because of the program that Vanderbilt's softball program is developed into.
A large part of that early success was national record-setting pitcher Michel Broussard, who won an astounding 112 straight games between 1980 and 1983. Vanderbilt softball great and 4-time state champion as a player, Margaret Haydell Johnson, went on to win additional titles with the Lady Terriers as head coach beginning in 1988, making the school one of the blue bloods of softball in the state of Louisiana. Both the softball field and the park on the campus of Vanderbilt Catholic are named in honor of these two greats. Over the years, the Olympic programs at Vanderbilt have gone on to win over 100 state titles. Those with multiple state titles to their credit are the boys tennis program with 9 titles, the girls swimming program, and the boys soccer program, both with 8 titles. Boys swimming and golf have 7 titles apiece. Girls tennis and the cheer squad at VCHS lay claim to 6 titles each. Girls cross country has 4 titles, with girls soccer having 3. And finally, volleyball, girls and boys bowling, and girls track and field all have 2 titles to date. As with Terrebonne High, there were individuals on the athletic programs at St. Francis and Vanderbilt who went on to achieve at the highest level. Among those was Major League Baseball pitcher Harold Haydell. Haydell was an all-state pitcher for the Terriers from 1960 to 1962. He was drafted by the Houston Colt 45s in 1962 and made his first appearance in Major League Baseball for the Minnesota Twins in 1970. Another star in the baseball diamond for the Terriers was 1978 graduate Harry McCullough. McCullough was an all-stater who later was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the 3rd round of the 1980 June amateur draft and again in the 1st round of the 1981 January secondary phase draft. In football, Carl Morgan was a 1979 graduate who was an important part of that 1977 run at a state championship for the Terriers. Morgan went on to UCLA after high school, where he was an all-Pac-10 defensive lineman, and he later played in the NFL with both the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Houston Oilers. And the Terriers have an alum still playing in the National Football League. Elijah McGuire, a 2013 graduate, was drafted in the 5th round of the 2017 NFL Draft by the New York Jets. He presently is a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, where he won a Super Bowl ring in 2020 in Super Bowl 54. Established in 1953, Southdown High School served the Terrebonne Parish African American population before integration. A member of the public school system, Southdown was a sanctioned Louisiana interscholastic and literary organization school. Throughout the 60s, Southdown had very competitive programs, but it was baseball that garnered the school its only state championship. Behind the pitching of James Johnson and the all-around play of Elroy Clay and James Stewart, the Eagles defeated L.B. Landry High School out of New Orleans in a thriller in the 1969 LILO state championship game that was played on the campus of Southdown High School, presently located at the corner of Tunnel Boulevard and St. Charles Street in Houma. Although down most of the contest, Stewart hit a 3-run homer to pull the Eagles even in the late innings, and Clay scored on a balk in the bottom of the 6th inning, with a run proving to be the difference in a 5-4 victory. Although falling short of winning an LILO state championship in both football and basketball, Southdown teams had local success as they did win district titles in multiple years in the 1960s. The football team thought to be the strongest for the Eagles was the 1966 squad under the leadership of head coach Raymond Taylor. The Eagles sported outstanding athletes such as Elwood Williams, Alan Nixon, Gerald Price, Tyrone Smith, Donald Stovall, so many others. But there may not be a better athlete to come out of Southdown or the entire parish of Terrebonne than 1967 Eagle graduate Frank Lewis. After gaining Little College All-America honors on the football field for legend Eddie Robinson and Grambling State University, Lewis was drafted in the first round of the 1971 NFL Draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he went on to earn Super Bowl IX and Super Bowl X rings. After being traded to the Buffalo Bills in 1978, he became a Pro Bowler as a part of the Bills in 1981.
Guys get out there and play competitive. Everybody want to beat you. You know, everybody want to win. So it's not like it's a friendship game. You know, everybody's out for blood, trying to do the best they can. And as the years pass, they just develop your talent.
The third of the parish's Catholic schools was opened by the Diocese of New Orleans in the community of Chauvin in 1958. The Black Knights of St. Joseph Benedictine began LHSAA play soon after opening its doors in 1958. The school only entertained athletic programs for about 12 years before closing its doors in 1972. The school is widely known for coaching excellence, as many of our state's leading coaches got their start at the Class B school. Among them was Sonny Jackson, who led the Black Knights to several district championships before moving up the ranks to later become the head coach of NCAA schools Nicholls State University and McNeese State University. St. Joe's basketball program was led by Gray Falls, who later enjoyed a successful stint at Delgado Community College in New Orleans. Other high school legendary coaches got their start at the Little School in the Bayou, including Ralph Perry, who later won multiple football state championships at South Lafourche High School, and George Vizier, who became a coaching staple at Vermilion Catholic in Abbeville. The first All-Stater from the Chauvin School was football offensive lineman Glenn Crochet in the early 60s. The most decorated athletes to come out of the school were 1964 graduate Dwight Savan, who'd starred in football at USL after his time in Chauvin and later was on the New Orleans Saints roster as a free agent when the NFL franchise was initiated. And 1965 graduate Larry Zerang, who was 6'7", state Class B most valuable basketball star. Zerang later went on to excel at McNeese State University on the hardwood. In 1961, Buddy Marcella took on the task of starting yet another athletic program for one of our parish schools, and this time it was for upstart South Terrebonne. The public high school is located in Berg and serves the Bayou regions of Montague, Chauvin, Berg, and East Houma. The school population was substantially larger than that of St. Francis, and the area was fertile with athletic talent.
These kids down that bayou were tough kids, you know, and it's going to take a little while for me to get them going. And especially in baseball, because they didn't play a lot of baseball. The town kids were playing all the time in some kind of program, you know. But the Gano boys came with me, Bruce and Brian, and they helped us get started in football.
We had quite a few very good athletes that may have never played at Terrebonne. And I think part of this situation was transportation. How do you do all of that and still be able to get a ride home in the evening when you live down Grand Caillou, Little Caillou, Montague? So that was always a problem. And when we, for instance, when we started at South Terrebonne, our August workouts, the coaches kept us there all day for 2-a-day workouts. because many of these young guys did not have transportation. And parents couldn't take them back and forth. Back then, most households, you had one vehicle.
Participating in the largest classification in the LHSAA, Gators captured their first state championship in the sport of track and field in 1973. That team was led by sprinter Melvin Johnson, who held many national high school records in his tenure at the school. Johnson and his relay partners Ricky Britt, Robert Lagarde, and Herman Verdun also held the national record for the 4x100 relay as the fastest team in the United States that year. South Terrebonne was the first public school in Terrebonne Parish to win a state football title. Under the leadership of one of Marcello's players in the 70s, Richard Curlin led the football squad to the 1991 Class 4A state championship. The team was led by future LSU signee David Butler on offense and Ivan Williams on defense, a future all-conference player at Nicholls State. The Gators held on for a 14-12 victory over Crowley High School in the Superdome on December 14, 1991. The parish came out in full force for the contest in the Dome, as attendance records were set that night for the most viewers ever to witness a high school event in the state of Louisiana. Just recently, the South Terrebonne baseball program, with head coach and alum of STHS, Mike Barba at the helm, won the 2022 LHSAA state title as the Gators defeated North Vermilion High School 7-6. This win transcended sports as Hurricane Ida devastated the campus of South Terrebonne in August of 2021, and this team had no home to practice or play for the entire season. All games were away from their campus as the student body platooned to the very northern part of the parish as they used H.L. Bourgeois High School's facility. Other Gator sports that had successful runs at state championships were the 1989 and 1991 softball teams under the leadership of Val Cooper. Both teams fell just short in the state championship game on the 4A level. And Chip Didier coached the Lady Gators volleyball squad to the 1984 state 4A championship contest, with the Gators falling in that contest. There were many South Terrebonne athletes who went on to have successful professional careers, mostly on the gridiron. Johnson, who went on to play college football with Colorado University and later with the Kansas City Chiefs, died tragically in 1980 during what was considered to be a routine surgery while with the franchise. Thomas Skippy Ezel was a standout quarterback for the Gators from 1974 to 1977. Ezel was the first ninth grade athlete allowed to play up to the varsity level in our public school system. This after he was a national finalist as a 13-year-old in the traditional NFL punt, pass, and kick competition. He actually attended Oak Lawn Junior High as a ninth grade student athlete, but played football at South Terrebonne High School. Jay Penison, a 1979 Gator graduate, went on to have a very successful stint with the Houston Oilers of the NFL, playing on arguably the best offensive line ever in the NFL as a center with the likes of Hall of Famer Bruce Matthews, Dean Steinkuhler, Mike Munchak, and Kent Hill. Clarence Verdun, a 1980 graduate of South Terrebonne, is probably the most decorated athlete to come out of the Berg School on the professional level, as he won a Super Bowl ring with the Washington Redskins in 1988 and was a member of the NFL All-Pro team as a kick returner in both 1992 and 1993. Melvin Johnson's brother, Troy, had a 6-year run as a wide receiver in the USFL, the NFL, and the Canadian Football League.
Coach Marcello was just brilliant. He could look at you and make adjustments, so I moved to wide receiver. In our JV year, I led the team in receptions, and Clarence Verdun led the team in rushing.
And Philip Livas, a 2007 graduate of South Terrebonne High School, went on to star at Louisiana Tech, where he was the MVP of the 2010 Independence Bowl, and later spent time with both the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL. Livas was recently named as one of the top 50 football players to ever play at Louisiana Tech. With the northern part of Terrebonne Parish booming in the early 70s, H.L. Bourgeois High School was established in Gray to serve the communities of Schriever, Gibson, Gray, and Upper Bayou Black, along with portions of the northern part of Houma. Brought in to start the athletic program for the Braves was Don Schwab, a native of Labadyville and a former LSU great. H.L. Bourgeois also started its tenure at the highest level of LHSAA competition, being classified as a 4A school at the outset, and is still the largest school population-wise in the parish. Early football teams at HLB had success at the district level, but it wasn't until the strong season in 1987 by the volleyball program under head coach Chip Didier, who moved north to the school from South Terrebonne, that the athletic program at HLB achieved. Didier also led the 1989 Lady Braves to another state title, followed up by a 1992 state runner-up title. As a matter of fact, girls programs at the reservation have the only state championships to date for the school, as Gerald Albert, who also migrated from the north to Gray from Vanderbilt Catholic in 1988, led the Lady Braves softball program to a 1992 state 4A championship, ironically over South Terrebonne in a game that was played in Alexandria. The Lady Braves rode the arm and bat of All-State pitcher Class 4A MVP Joni Dusenberry in that special season, as the girls broke through with a championship after finishing as state runners-up in both 1990 and 1991.
Paul Fournier, when I left Vanderbilt, I really appreciate he and Luther Fletcher's efforts to allow me to coach in the public schools at H.L. Bourgeois. But again, like I said before, I was lucky again because when I got there, here comes this influx of really, really good athletes that we were able to develop the program there.
The highlight for the boys programs at H.L. Bourgeois was a 2008 5A state runner-up title for the Braves basketball team. Under the guidance of head coach Andrew Kywet, HLB fell to a very dominant Lafayette High squad in the Cajun Dome, which is on the campus of the University of Louisiana. This has been the only finals appearance for any of the boys programs on the reservation to date, but it does not overshadow some of the individual talent that went on to have professional careers in their respective sports. Two of H.L. Bourgeois' biggest athletic stars actually followed the same path to the professional level. Both 1979 alum Jesse Miles and 1983 alum Mitch Andrews went on to excel in football at LSU, then moved on to play with the Denver Broncos in the National Football League. Miles, a running back, was an all-state performer in both football and track and field while in Gray. Andrews was a tight end, and he caught 53 passes in his career as an LSU Tiger. As part of the Living Word ministry, Houma Christian School was established in 1984 on Valhalla Boulevard in Houma as an alternative to the public schools and the Houma-Thibodaux Diocese. The school participated in the Louisiana Christian School Athletic Association for over 25 years before becoming a member of the LHSAA in the early second decade of this century. Although very early in its infant stage of playing in the high school association as a 2A school, the Lady Warriors basketball team did make 2 consecutive state final games, falling in the Division IV bracket to powerhouse Lafayette Christian in both 2017 and 2018. To alleviate the population increase in the southern part of the parish, Ellender Memorial Junior High was upgraded to high school status in 1988. It served the East Houma area along with the Dulac community. The school became immediately known for its stellar boys and girls basketball play. With Ernest Brown starting the basketball program from its infancy, Patriots basketball program made deep runs in the Class A playoffs throughout the 90s, with the 1997 team falling in the state championship game to Cohen by 1 point, 59-58. The team captured the state title in 1998 under the direction of head coach Sterling Washington in a thrilling win over Woodlawn of Baton Rouge in overtime, 63-58. Patriots made it back to the title game in 2007 under head coach Scott Gautreaux, this time falling short in an overtime decision to Westgate High School out of New Iberia. The Lady Patriots basketball program has achieved dynasty status over the past 30 years, as the school hired legendary coach Kenneth Dixon to lead the girls program in 1992. The girls have accumulated 6 state titles, 5 with Dixon at the helm, and 1 this past year with Javine Robinson after the tragic death of Coach Dixon during the playoffs of 2021. The title years for the Patriots were 1999, 2000, 03, 07, 17, and 2022, with runner-up titles coming in 2001 and 2008. The lone athlete from Ellender Memorial to achieve professional status from the school is 2017 alum football athlete Dontavian Martin. Better known as Tay, he went on to have an all-Big 12 career at Oklahoma State University as a wide receiver for the Cowboys and is presently an NFL free agent with the San Francisco 49ers. Our parish's latest school to compete in the Louisiana High School Athletic Association is Covenant Christian Academy, located in the northern part of the parish near Highway 90. Part of the First Baptist Ministry, the school was established in 2007 with the early athletic teams participating in the Louisiana Christian School Athletic Association, where they had much success. In 2012, the school made the move to LHSAA, where the school was initially successful at the 1A level in football with multiple district championships, and, as of late, in baseball, where the program has 6 consecutive district titles. The school is still in search of its first team state title. The success of the athletic programs in the Terrebonne Parish high schools only accelerated with the development of recreation outlets for the citizens of our community over the years. First, in the spring of 1937, a movement for organized recreation for the parish was started by the Homer Rotary Club. During the fall of that same year, the principal civic and fraternal bodies of Terrebonne Parish were organized to make recommendations to the parish police jury. The parish school board also was involved, and the city council as well here in Houma, with each being appropriated a sum of $700 to be expended in the promotion of recreational activities in the ensuing year. This was the start of the Terrebonne Parish Recreation Council, known today as Terrebonne Parish Recreation. The mission was dedicated to serve the recreational needs of all of the residents of the parish, regardless of their age or status in life. In the early stages of TPR, organized leagues were set up for the youth in baseball, softball, basketball, and volleyball. On a community level, there were community fun days, family fun nights, fishing rodeos, talent nights, car tournaments, ping pong tournaments, and more. Santa Claus and Easter Bunny were brought in on respective holidays, and the moniker, "The family that plays together stays together," was instituted. The first superintendent of recreation was Stephen Kenny, a man who had served for a number of years in the Terrebonne area as the field representative for the Boy Scouts of America. Kenny assumed the post of superintendent on November 1st, 1944, and continued in this capacity for 27 years. During those 27 years, the name Steve Kenny and recreation became synonymous in the Terrebonne Parish area. Along with other programs, Terrebonne Parish Recreation instituted the sport of men's and women's slow pitch leagues in softball. That was in the 1960s, satisfying the need for recreation to the adult community, teams being sponsored by various businesses, many that were oil field related. Although not all weekend tournaments were hosted by the Recreation League, most were played at recreation fields dotted across the parish and were a financial means for teams to pay incurring expenses. An adult softball complex was completed in East Houma on the old Naval Air Base property that still stands today as a central location for softball play. In 1973, the sport of Bantam League tackle football was included for boys ages 9 to 13, and seldom used Southdown Football Stadium was used as the hub for league play. In the early 80s, a girls' fast-pitch softball league was initiated as the sport became popular at the high school level. With travel league sports becoming popular in the last 10 years and some growing pains throughout the decades, TPR is still a viable asset to the parish for fitness, health, and competitive competition in a multitude of sports and activities. Initiated by the City Council of Houma, the Houma Athletic Recreation Council was established in the 50s to facilitate and maintain youth recreation leagues in football, basketball, and baseball within the city limits of Houma. These youth leagues were governed by a director of athletics, the first of which was Terrebonne High School football coach Buck Sieber, later to be headed by Buddy Marcello, who had started successful programs at both St. Francis and South Terrebonne High School. Park reached its heights in competition and participation in the late 60s and early 70s, and was dissolved in the late 70s as recreation was consolidated parish-wide with Terrebonne Parish Recreation. Both TPR and Hart did not field soccer leagues. With soccer gaining popularity in the United States, the Houma Terrebonne Soccer Association began play in 1979 with the goal of offering the sport of soccer to boys and girls. Toddlers all the way up to young adults also compete both on the recreation level and on the competitive play level. Initially known as the Bayou Soccer Association, first playing fields were located near Ellender Junior High and Annunciata Catholic Church on the east side of Houma. In 1984, the Terrebonne Chargers 12U team became the first team in Houma to win a state championship. The 2022 HTSA Blackhawk 19U team has the highest national finish in association history as they made it to the USYS National President's Cup in Greensboro, North Carolina in July, finishing fourth in the country. Presently operating at the Bayou Country Sports Complex on Highway 311 in Houma, the HTSA is no doubt instrumental in the rise of soccer play in the parish, as Vanderbilt Catholic holds multiple titles in both girls and boys play. South Terrebonne has a state runner-up title, and all of our schools are now very competitive in the sport. With its start being a leisure measure to satisfy the athletic competitor, bowling became a sport that has grown to new heights in our area, with bowlers from our Bayou region reaching national success and our high school instituting the sport as one of their athletic programs. Bowling started as a family affair, with only a few lanes available at the first lanes in Terrebonne Parish in the VFW building located on Barrow Street in the 1950s. The success of the lanes on Barrow Street led to the erection of Houma Bowl, located on Main Street, just north of the Houma city limits, in the 1960s. With substantially more lanes, Houma Bowl afforded league play along with a site for those who were advanced to take bowling to the next level. Jim Crowley, who came to Terrebonne Parish as a member of the Navy station on the Naval Air Base on the east side of Houma, remained and became an integral part of advancing the sport. He managed and later owned Houma Bowl until its demise in the early 80s. In 1975, the east side of Houma had Bowl South open, located at the corner of Tunnel Boulevard and Grand Caillou Road. Bowl South catered to bowling leagues of all ages and was one of the first outlets for high school bowlers in our area. Unfortunately, the 12-lane outlet was devastated by Hurricane Ida in August of 2021 and is no longer operable. The latest and only active bowling alley in Terrebonne Parish is Creole Lanes, located on Tunnel Boulevard near South Down Elementary. Established in 1983, Creole Lanes was the first to have synthetic lanes and an automatic scoring system. Jim Crowley acquired the facility in 1993 with Perry Segura after the facility ran into financial trouble, and in 1998 became sole owner and immediately upgraded the facility with glow-in-the-dark carpet and automatic children bumpers. Creole Lanes now is the primary host of bowling matches for all of Terrebonne Parish schools. The most decorated bowler to come out of Terrebonne Parish is Avery LeBlanc. LeBlanc grew up in Bayou Cane and is a 1962 graduate of Terrebonne High. He became a member of the Professional Bowlers Association and has qualified for the television finals of 12 PBA events. Being part of the sportsman's paradise, Terrebonne Parish has certainly been a hunter's wonderland. Not many people know that we have one of the finest educational marksman programs in the country here in Terrebonne, which encourages the young hunter both in skill and safety.
YHEC stands for Youth Hunter Education Challenge, and this program started way back by the NRA, and they wanted to have a program to get kids in the outdoors, kids with gun safety and that kind of stuff. And Terrebonne Parish picked it up right away in 1986. There's two categories. There's a junior and a senior event. Junior is from 10 years old to 14 years old, then 15 to 18. And North Louisiana just kicked everybody's butt the whole time. They won everything. And we would go to the competitions and we would hope to win maybe a third place in one of the categories. And then we practiced really hard, and the kids all got their friends and everything. This is South Louisiana, sportsman's paradise, right, in Terrebonne Parish. So we had the duck hunters in the area and stuff. So they came on, we got some kids and we got some great parents all through this. And we finally put our first team together in 2006, and we won a state championship, and that was pretty big. And in 2007, that was a senior one. In 2007, we won a junior, and then from then on, we've pretty well been winning everything since then. So they know who we are. 2014, we had a super team. I mean, we've had great teams all the way through, and a bunch of state champions, individual state champions. But in 2014, Doyle Donaldson was a senior and William Powell was a junior. And we went to the national competition. I think that was in Pennsylvania that year. And not only did we win the team award, but these two boys actually won the individual national award.
With our climate, recreational swimming has always been popular in our area. Natural access was readily available with our waterways, and public pools in various parish communities became a reality, starting with the American Legion pool built by the WPA in 1934. It wasn't until the early 70s that competitive swimming found its way into the area, with summer programs being offered at the Bayou Bend Pool in Lisa Park and Ellendale Country Club. Throughout the end of the 20th century, competitive swim teams popped up throughout the parish, most participating in the South Central Swim Association. Teams such as the Bayou Barracudas and Orca from Houma, the Tarpons of Bayou Blue, Bayou Stingrays of Chauvin have led to all of our high schools in the parish now having competitive swim teams in the LHSAA, with Vanderbilt having accumulated 7 state titles. Originally called the Houma Golf Club, Terrebonne Parish got its first golf course in 1923. The 9-hole layout was located next to the Intracoastal Canal in the southwest portion of Houma and had crude beginnings. Substantial upgrades were made to the grounds in the 50s, and the course's name was later changed by new management to Southern Oaks Golf Club. Due to financial difficulties, the course was closed in March of 2018. Designed by Joseph S. Finger, the Ellendale Golf Course opened in 1967. The 18-hole par 72 course measures 7,120 yards of golf from the black tees. Putting greens are Miniverde Ultra Dwarf Bermuda. Ellendale Country Club has hosted numerous professional and amateur championships and qualifiers, including the APT Golf Pro Tour Series, the Women's APT Golf Tour Series, and the Ellendale Intercollegiate, which is hosted by Nicholls State. The course record of 63 is held by Bubba Watson in the 2005 Adams Golf Tour, hosted by Mary Bird Perkins Cancer Center at then called Terrebonne General Medical Center. In 1982, Houma got its third golf course as Colonial Acres, a 9-hole course, was designed, built, and owned by John Cooper. With only Vanderbilt Catholic competing in golf before 1990, the course, located on Alma Street in the Lisa Park area of Houma, became ambassadors for all of the public schools as programs were begun at all high schools in Terrebonne Parish. Cooper allowed the high schools use of the course at no charge. Ironically, Colonial Acres is now known as the Houma Golf Club, as new management changed the name. Terrebonne Parish now has 2 fully operational courses, the 18-hole layout at Ellendale Country Club, the 9-hole facility at the Houma Golf Club, along with a practice 9-hole par 3, and that's at the recreation facility in Donner. Along with the rest of the state, boxing achieved golden era status in our parish in the early part of the 20th century, especially on the amateur stage, with access to many gyms. The most decorated of those boxers was Sewally Whitney, a 1934 graduate of Terrebonne High School who was in line to compete in the 1940 Olympics, which were canceled due to World War II. Whitney, known as the Terrebonne Terror, was a member of Loyola's boxing team from 1936 to 1940. He made history at the school, becoming the only student to ever win 2 NCAA championships. He was also a 3-time SAAU and Sugar Bowl champion. Through the remainder of the 19th century, Terrebonne Parish hosted local and regional boxing cards, primarily at the East Park Recreation Center. And now, in 2022, the parish has its most decorated professional boxer, Jonathan Guidry of Dulac. Jonathan won the North American Boxing Federation heavyweight title in June when knocking out title holder Dacquary Scott in the 6th round of the title bout in Miami. Guidry was 18-1-2 at the time of the fight with 16 knockouts, and his only defeat was in a world boxing title fight, losing in a controversial split decision in Warren, Ohio in January. A side note related to boxing, maybe the greatest boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali, visited Terrebonne Parish in 1975 with an impromptu drop-in at H.L. Bourgeois High School. Ali, traveling from New Orleans to Houston, knew of a faculty member at the school and came in to visit and speak to the student body for about 90 minutes. That was when the boxer was at the apex of his career. Tennis has been a competitive pastime in Terrebonne Parish starting in the mid-20th century and continuing today.
There was 4 courts in Houma. Along with the Shady Oak Park, you had the 2 courts by the bowling alley, in the back of the bowling alley, and you had 1 on Wright Street, and you had 2 at Dumas Auditorium, all of which had lights. So it's my belief that our forefathers really prepared for tennis in Houma long before I started playing, because these courts were all there in 1950. The 2 courts at the air base were blacktop. All the rest of them was concrete. Now, right now, the Roussel courts are unplayable. They've just deteriorated to nothing. The Shady Oak Park is now being a parking lot for the coroner's office. And the only one that survived was the Wright Street Park. And it's still there and it's still usable. There's just don't have any lights right now. Now, back in those days, you had to have a press because the rackets were made out of wood. And with the humidity down here, if you didn't have a press, your racket would start warping. The Air Force Radar Station organization did a big tennis tournament for the city. One weekend we had the junior division, the next weekend we had the senior division. And we played it mostly on the air base courts. So that was in '56, they were quite usable. In fact, the first weekend I won the junior division championship. So the next weekend I asked, could I play with the men's division? And they agreed. So I ended up playing against Reggie Cox for the men's championship for the city of Houma in the spring of 1956. And I beat him in the third set. So I won the junior and the men's division in 1956.
With the rich history of sporting success in our area, maybe the sport with the most national relevance in Terrebonne Parish is drag racing. With natives of the parish like world-renowned Leonard Hughes of Candies and Hughes, world champion driver Sammy Pizzolata, the Teuton family, Jerry Dover, Bobo Geist, Jerry Caro, and so many more, Houma was a hotbed for drivers, mechanics, tuners, and owners. NHRA racing started at its earliest with local racing at airport strips, and Houma was no different. The early days of racing occurred on Blimp Road on the old Naval Air Base located near the Houma Airport. From those humble beginnings, racing enthusiasts went on to thrive nationally.
They were all at airports, and we raced there, raced at the Hammond Airport, Esтерwood, Louisiana Airport, Lake Charles, and then Houma, was a little later. It came along just a few months later.
Leonard Hughes is known as the godfather of racing from the area. Born in Gray, but living most of his life in the Broadmoor area of Houma, Hughes' early dominance came regionally in winning virtually every race in his '57 Chevy, which later led to a partnership with Paul Candies.
When that '57 Chevy, that wasn't a regular '57. They only made 10 of those cars. They made it for NASCAR. It was a no-back seat, and it had the roll cage pads in the bottom, if whatever sport you want to do with it. And it was a drag race car too, and that's what started me off. I almost won every week with that '57 Chevrolet.
Hughes' experience with racing ran the full gamut of driver, mechanic, tuner, and owner. Both Candies and Hughes are in the NHRA Hall of Fame. Hughes won 45 major events between 1970 and 1994, including 28 NHRA titles in funny car and top fuel divisions. Other notable sons of Terrebonne Parish to succeed at the national level were Sammy Pizzolata, who was the 1988 NHRA Stock Eliminator World Champion and always at the top of the leaderboards on the circuit during that era, and Jeff Teuton, who is in the NHRA South Central Division IV Hall of Fame, holding multiple NJRA, ET, and MPR records with a variety of cars.
You had a regional director for NHRA, and they had this old Chevrolet sedan delivery. It had a little rack on the top, and they put boards up there and the timing equipment. And they actually we started with a flagman who put the flag on a button. And when he lifted it, the lights turned green. And there wasn't any red light or nothing like that, but back then when you lifted it, if somebody left that early, they stopped it.
Teuton was the first to win class at the U.S. Nationals in a drag-pack Dodge. He also was a winner in Stock Eliminator at the U.S. Nationals in 2011 and still holds the title of oldest driver to win in Stock Eliminator. Jeff has sponsored dozens of cars and drivers throughout the years with world championship results. So many more drivers and mechanics from our parish can be added to this list of those having success both regionally and nationally. Adding to the appeal of racing in our area was the creation of a drag strip in Terrebonne Parish. Located on West Park Avenue, near present-day H.L. Bourgeois High School, just north of Houma, Southland Dragway opened on July 1st, 1969. It was built on land which was previously a golf driving range, and the track office was the former pro shop. Luke Grzaffi agreed to fund the track, which was modeled after Orange County, California Raceway, with covered grandstands, an octagonal-shaped tower, and a scoreboard to display the ET and MPH on each run. Racing greats of the time like Gene Snow, Don Prudhomme, Tom McEwen, and our own Candies and Hughes came in to race at the facility. It operated on the second and fourth Sundays of the month and featured class racing along with Top Fuel and Funny Car shows, Division IV WCS points meets, and even a soapbox derby. After changing ownership a few times throughout the next decade, a group of Houma racers, headed by Joe Touton, revived the track later in the 1970s, installing lights for night racing and operated it for one rain-filled season. 10 years after opening, the drag strip was closed. Ironically, with the sport of baseball not being in the high schools as a competitive sports program until 1951 at St. Francis, baseball was the sport to have the first professional franchise in Terrebonne Parish over 10 years prior. The 1940 Houma Buccaneers became the first minor league baseball team based in Houma, but the team didn't make it the entire season in the Bayou region. The Houma Buccaneers began play as members of the Class D level Evangeline League. On June 27, 1940, the Houma Buccaneers had a 23-43 record when the franchise moved to Natchez, Mississippi, finishing the season as the Natchez Pilgrims. Minor league baseball returned to Houma in 1946. After stopping play during World War II, the Evangeline League reformed for the 1946 season. Originally, a league franchise was awarded to Opelousas, Louisiana, but the potential franchise there was ultimately unable to meet financial needs, and the franchise folded. A month before the 1946 season, a group in Houma led by Gibson Otan met financial needs by organizing a corporation, selling stock to the public, and securing the American Legion field on Williams Boulevard. Houma was granted a franchise, and Tom Smith was appointed as the business manager. The 1946 team used the actual uniforms intended for Opelousas. The team moniker of Indians worked for Houma. Again, playing in Class D, the 1946 Indians won the league championship. They ended the season with a record of 92-36, finishing 6 full games ahead of second-place Natchez. The team was led by player-manager Joseph Benning and player-manager Paul Fugit, with Fugit hitting .327 with 23 home runs and 130 RBIs. Leading the team and entire Evangeline League in hitting that season was Indian outfielder Mike Conroy, who hit for a .372 average. Leonard Picu led the league with 53 stolen bases, and Bill Thomas had an outstanding pitching record of 35 wins and 7 losses. After the 1946 championship season, allegations surfaced that Houma and Abbeville players had conspired with gamblers over the outcomes of 3 playoff games. At the October 23, 1946 league meeting, it was alleged that the Houma players conspired with gamblers to lose the 4th game of the first round of the recent playoffs, lose the first game of the second round, and win the 4th game of the second round. After the allegations, Judge W.G. Bremen, president of the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues, summoned the unnamed accused players to attend a hearing on January 10th to 11th, 1947. After interviews and further investigation, 5 players were put on the ineligible list, meaning they could not play in minor league baseball. Houma players Bill Thomas, Leonard Picu, Alvin Kaiser, and Paul Fugit, along with Don Vetterell of Abbeville, were placed on the ineligible list by Brenham for their actions. Later, Thomas and Picu appealed and were ultimately restored immediately for the Houma team. After his reinstatement, Thomas would continue his career to set the all-time minor league career records for total games, victories, losses, hits, and runs. His career record was 383 wins, 264 losses over 24 seasons. Continuing play in 1947, the Houma Indians placed 5th in the Evangeline League final standing. The 1948 Houma Indians again captured the Evangeline League pennant and overall championship after the entire playoffs were canceled due to weather, making Houma the default champion. Houma ended the regular season with an 81-55 record under manager George Washburn, finishing 2.5 games ahead of the second-place Hammond Berries. The Houma 1948 playoff series against Baton Rouge's Red Sticks was tied 1-1, and the Hammond Berries and Thibodeau Giants were tied 2-2 when the entire 1948 playoffs were canceled due to bad weather. Homa's Roy Tex Sanner had a noteworthy season as a hitter and a pitcher. Sanner won the Evangeline League's Triple Crown with 34 home runs, 126 RBIs, and a batting average of .386. As a pitcher, Sanner had a 21-2 record, .258 ERA with 251 strikeouts. Homa's season home attendance was 96,744, an average of 1,423 at each contest. Homa Indians and manager George Washburn won their second consecutive pennant in 1949. After capturing the Evangeline League pennant with an 81-58 record, the Indians were defeated by the Alexandria Aces 4-1 in the first round of the playoffs. In 1950, the Evangeline League was upgraded to a C League, with the Indians finishing with a 53-84 record and had the first 3 consecutive 7th-place finishes through 1952. Average attendance declined each year, with attendance being 632 per game in 1950, 474 in 1951, and 377 in 1952. The Indians were folded in 1952. Homa was without a minor league team until 2003, when the Homa Hawks, owned by Gus Brown Jr., became an expansion member of the Southeastern League of Professional Baseball. The team initially played their home games in Homa at Southland Field on Prevost Drive. In May 2003, the name of the mascot was released following an internet poll to determine the name. Parrain, the Hawk, received 52% of the votes. The team would open the 2003 season at home against the Pensacola Pelicans behind a crowd of over 1,200 and defeated the defending league champs by a score of 11-5 behind pitching ace Stephen Locklear. After discrepancies in paperwork related to field usage, the Hawks would play home games at the visitors' ballpark and only played 3 games in Terrebonne Parish. After a respectable 1-loss record for the season, the Hawks disbanded after the 2003 season, claiming breach of contract with the local recreation district. And we don't want to forget one very strong baseball squad that competed as amateurs in our area. In the late 60s and early 70s, Homa fielded a team called, again, the Homa Indians, who participated in the Southern Advanced Amateur Baseball League. Comprised of many ex-Nicholls State University players, the team, sponsored by the Homa Civitan Club, played its home games on the Vanderbilt Catholic Diamond. The team flirted with league pennant titles until disbanding in 1971. Established in 1980, Homa was host to a semi-pro baseball league franchise called the Homa Oilers. The team was sponsored by Budweiser, and many came to know the team as the Budweiser Eagles. Led by manager Gray Falls, the Oilers competed in the South Independent Semi-Pro League with other teams from New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Lake Charles, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast area. The team, comprised of ex-collegiate players mostly from the Bayou region, was one of the more successful teams in the league until it disbanded after the 1984 season. The Oilers played their home games at Vanderbilt Catholic Field, now known as Harold Haydell Park, on the campus of the school. First taste of professional football in Homa was of the indoor fashion, as the Homa Bayou Bucks were awarded a franchise on December 19th of 2001. The team, owned by Pseudo Properties Incorporated, competed at the National Indoor Football League level from 2002 through 2004, playing their home games at the Homa Terrebonne Civic Center. Pseudo Properties assigned Travis Carell as the general manager of the franchise, and he in turn named Jack Phillips Jr. as the team's head coach. The NIFL was comprised of teams primarily from the Mid-South Oil Belt to the Southern Atlantic area. Most players competing for the Bayou Bucks were from a 200-mile radius of the Homa area, and most had some type of collegiate competition background. After a 5-win, 9-loss first season in 2002, the team found moderate success in making the NIFL playoffs, with 10 wins in 2003 and 11 wins in 2004. Unfortunately, the Bucks lost in the first round of the playoffs in both of those seasons. After the 2004 NIFL season, the team folded following internal problems. Based in Texas and Louisiana, the Southern Indoor Football League was Homa's second attempt at a football franchise. Established in 2009, the SIFL had teams from Homa, Lafayette, Lake Charles, Beaumont, and Austin, actually competing after the league initially stated there would be teams from the Houston area involved. Under the ownership of Franklin Thomas, the team from Homa played its home games in the Homa Terrebonne Civic Center. The Conquerors struggled in the league with only 3 wins and 8 losses. In addition, the Conquerors became property of the league mid-season due to differences between the team ownership and the SIFL. With 4 of the 5 teams in the league making the playoffs, the number 4 seed Houma squad was soundly defeated by the top-seeded team from Lake Charles in the first round. Due to internal problems with both the league and the Conquerors management, 2009 was the lone season for the franchise. And we'd be remiss to leave out fishing as a haven for anglers, both freshwater and salt. Competitive fishing tournaments and rodeos did not happen in Terrebonne Parish until the mid-19th century and now revolve around numerous organizations using the format for fundraising. There is hardly a weekend from March until August where you can't find a fishing tournament somewhere in our area. And we even have anglers who have held state and national records throughout the years, and one that still remains.
Me and David Prevost had a chance to make a little fishing trip one day, and we ran out of Grand Isle. It was just me and him in the boat, right to Grand Isle. It's just 7 to 10 miles out of the pass, and we were in tarpon. Us and some other boats were in tarpon. We actually caught 8 that day. I caught 4 and he caught 4, but his last tarpon was a monster, and the state record was 230 pounds. And we didn't know it was that big until we got it to the side of the boat. But once we had it to the side of the boat, we both looked at it and said, "This is it. You know, this is the state record." Not knowing any better, we gaffed it, pulled it in the boat, and we ran to the weigh scale. We called the Wildlife and Fisheries. We got everybody there to verify the fish, and it actually was the United States record fish. So 246 and some change. I think it was like a 240 before that. And so David Prevost caught the United States and the Louisiana state record. And we're both from Terrebonne Parish, and we're right there in Grand Isle, right out the pass. So it was a great day that day.
In closing, our love of competition, on the fields and the courts, in the water and on the water, and in our little piece of sportsman's paradise, will always be a vital part of life. From those baseball games back in the late 19th century to the flourish of success in our programs, schools, and individuals, we truly do live in a sportsman's paradise.
So what we're going to do is we'll go on and Bobby's going to talk a little bit. Excuse me, I guess you can hear that a little better. Bobby's going to talk a little bit about recreation just to kind of finish things off. I did want to say, related to that, I know Brian and them do a terrific job with IT, with consolidated government. So we, you know, my goal when this was started was, okay, we'll do it for the 200-year celebration. That's okay. But I'm giving this to like all of the libraries in the area so that, you know, future generations can kind of see it too. But it is on YouTube, and the nice thing, somebody asked me back there, wouldn't it be nice if you could get to what you want to get to? Like, so you want to find out about St. Joe. You want to get to St. Joe, right? Well, you can. If you go to YouTube to do this, there is like a little menu underneath it, and it's in blue, and you just click on what you want to see. I mean, I hope somebody watches the whole thing, but that being said, you can get to specifically what you want to get to along the way. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Bobby. We'll get his PowerPoint started up. About 12 minutes, you know, where he where he talks about recreation in our community.
Thank you, Stan. And the only reason we wanted to touch on this is that so many of us in the room was a part of this, TPR, HARC, whatever coming up. You know, we lived it. So we had a few slides, and I'll kind of give you some things that happened behind the scenes way back then and all. So, as we said earlier, Mr. Kenny was the first TPR recreation director in 37, and then took, the program started in 37. Mr. Kennedy took it over in 44. And then Danny Domain later on in the early 70s came in, and Buck Seba was actually the first HARC director in the early 50s, and then Coach Marcella took it over in 59. And we'll touch on both programs real quick, but go ahead and Stan, hit it. You know, in the early years in TPR and Hark, too, I'm going to touch on both of these, there was many programs of arts and crafts, sewing, swimming lessons, baton twirling, Easter egg hunts, Santa Claus. I mean, all this was going on in every community all over, from the Bayou Kings to the Bergs to the Montagues to the Shrevers, you know, all over. This was going on all the time. And this was, committees were formed back then to do this. I have a book over here that I brought. It's the Bayou Cane Recreation Committee from the 60s. If you get a chance, just look this old, and it was falling apart. But there's so many things in there of articles and pictures of, you know, the activities that were going on back then that involved all the kids, and not just baseball, football, basketball, volleyball, but every little extra activities, which was great back then, and believe me. The early years of TPR, it reminds me of the movie Sandlot, because that's how it was. I mean, you know, we had no uniforms. You only had a couple of bats. You borrowed a glove, and there was no franchises back then. There was no Dixie Youth, and there was no Babe Ruth yet for us. So we played in your areas. Bayou Cane had teams. Shreveport had teams. Bayou Black, Gibson on the west side of town. The other side was the Montague Bergs, Grand Colliers, you know, Pontchartrains, all those had teams, Low Collier, and you played against those guys. You didn't cross the bayou, you know, you didn't cross the east and west. You stayed on that side. And this goes to show you how, you know, some of the guys got a little inventive here, and Montague got a Marks a lot and put an M on their T-shirt, you know, and that was big time when you did that. Another thing, when you travel back then, all teams traveled by buses. The bus would pick you up in an area, and there was 3 divisions: midgets, juniors, and seniors. Naturally, midgets was the little guys, juniors was about the middle, and the senior guys were 15, 16, and that was every sport. The bus would pick you up. I'll use Bayou Cane as the example. Picked you up somewhere around there, usually in Broadmoor. Go to Shreveport, play 3 games: the midgets first, the juniors second, seniors third if it was baseball. If it was basketball, same thing. Played flag football back then. And you stayed for all the games. You were a midget, you played first and went in the stands and watched the other 2 play. Game was over, everybody gets on the bus, comes back home. Coaches got paid. A coach got paid $15 every 2 weeks to coach a team. And I remember I coached a team when I was a sophomore in high school. I thought I was rich. I got $15 every 2 weeks. I'm rich. So anyway, then later on, uniforms showed up. Where they came from, I don't know. Because Texaco, we had Texaco uniforms in the Bayou Cane area. I don't know who brought them, but we thought we were the Yankees when we got those. And then Gibson got uniforms. They had Gibson on the front. Shreveport got uniforms. So Grand Collier got something. So it was all of a sudden uniforms are showing up. And that was pretty special. Then the girls' sports. Girls' sports came into TPR, I'm going to say in the early 70s when TPR started franchising. Franchise Dixie Youth Baseball, Babe Ruth Baseball, Biddy Basketball for boys and girls. So we started playing franchise sports in TPR. And then now, at that time, Hark was playing them already. So we just kind of got into them with those, playing together with those guys. And then, what's the next one, Stan? This is something that's gone away, the newspaper. The newspaper covered the youth sports like you wouldn't believe. And it shows you not only the youth, you know, adult softball. Every week there was articles in the paper with every team in the parish in TPR or Hark with a recap of the game. You know, it had your name in there, if you were a winning pitcher, if you got some hits. I mean, how great was that? You know, that's gone away over the years. So then the Hark program. Hark program was started, like we said, in about the early 50s. It was the guys from town, we called it. You left in town, you played in Hark. Their baseball was played on Williams Avenue, Leveron Street, and on the air base out in that area. And all those guys played in there. They played Dixie Youth, and great success in baseball in the Hawk program. And in recapping, recreation has changed so much over the years, but, I'm so proud to say that we've hosted so many national tournaments, World Series, and girls and boys, and have done an outstanding job. And it goes to show you the commitment from the people of our area to put something like this on. It's not easy, and it was so much fun to be a part of all this, and still am a part of it. There was 8 recreation directors in TPR, from Mr. Kenny to Roddy LaRia, who's here tonight. 8 directors over the years, Hawk 2. In 81, when the government consolidated, Hawk program and TPR came together, Tom Detweiler became the recreation director. Buddy chose to stay what he was doing. He stayed on, which was great, because Buddy Marcella was a great man for our recreation program. But in 81, when it consolidated, Tom Detweiler became the recreation director, and both programs came together, which made it even better. Again, thank everyone for coming tonight. This was so much fun to do. Believe I'm like Stan. I love this, and it was so much fun collecting all this and talking to guys who wore these jerseys and these jackets and everything, and it was just great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby. And thank you all again for coming. Yeah, I moved here in 1981, and I remember my first Hark, shirt, white with the red letters. I played in the gym in West Homa, because we moved at 600 Southern, right there at First and Southern. Mr. Boudreaux's hair barbershop, right there on the middle of the block. I remember going to the Legion pool, paying $25 to swim all day long. Wow, how much has changed, right? Isn't that crazy? And I also, one more thing, I remember I never got a hit my first season on the baseball team. My stepdad, he told me, he said, look, if you get a hit, I'll buy you the Pac-Man Atari game. I got the hit. The last game. That's a true story, true story. So what we want to do, we have a few minutes left here, and I know we had some amazing footage, amazing documents about what all is going on, but I'm sure a lot of you have questions. I'm sure a lot of you have stories to tell. So that's what we want to open it up for right now. So if anybody has any questions or you want to add to any of the stories you've heard, yes, sir. All right, we'll start with you. Let me bring you the mic. Hang on once. All right, you loud enough? Brian, I'm sorry, guys. Brian, you're not getting any of this, right? Okay. So the question was, when were the recreation districts formed? I'm sorry, sir. Just for.
Yeah, if I had to guess at it, probably late 70s, early 80s, before the consolidation. The police jury ran, I guess, the districts. Let's say ran them. They were over the districts back then before consolidation. The city program, which was Hark, was funded by the general fund. So that was the funding there. Then when it consolidated, then District 11 was formed, which was the city limits. So that was the last one to be formed. So yeah, it was all that was done before consolidation. Yeah, it was pretty much the same way it is, kind of like now. But the funding was there. I guess probably in the beginning, way in the beginning, when I noticed when TPR was formed in '37, and they gave a budget was $6,600, for TPR, and then in '44 when they hired Mr. Kenny as a director, in fact his office was in the old courthouse with one secretary. I remember. Yeah.
Any more questions? Come on. It's been come on, guys. Somebody's got something. No?
the Homer Indians field, where was that located?
On Williams Avenue. That picture right where you saw the picture on there, that big stadium where Legion Park School is in that area right there, was the Homer Indians field. And Mr. Duplantis, who was on the video, one story he told about the Homer Indians field was that when he was a kid during World War II, they housed German prisoners in the outfield, and they were in tents. And his mama told him, whatever you do, do not go by that field. There's Germans in there. He said, well, I got to go look at the Germans. So he went. But he said, we actually had German prisoners being, housed in the tent in the outfield at the field. I mean, look at that picture back there. What a good-looking field that was. I mean, gee, too bad it didn't burn. It burnt down. I mean, it was a solid wooden structure. You saw it, Kirby? You remember, huh? Yeah.
Now, Mr. Bobby, were they a farm team?
Huh?
Were they a farm team?
Yeah, Class D.
Yeah. For Cleveland, or
it was independent. No? Who was that one? Yeah.
You saw a picture of Tex Sanner in there. Tex Sanner, who was from Iowa, actually made it to the Dodgers. And what happened was when he got up to the Dodgers, he was a very headstrong person, and he got in a fight with Leo DeRocher. And they said, get out, and they banned him from playing Major League Baseball, but he was every bit as good as a lot of guys who were playing Major League Baseball. There are a lot of guys in there that did. And I will say this, too. Out of everything you see in here, if there was that one holy grail, and Bobby knows this, that one thing I wanted to show here was an Indians jersey. Man, and we thought, and then we lost it. And then maybe this person, and then we lost it. I know tomorrow somebody's going to call with a Homer Indians jersey. But that being said, that's the one thing. Because those guys, what's happening is you're trying to equate Class C and D from that era to Class AAA, AA, and A now, and it's not. What they basically were playing was AAA baseball in a more regional setting. So those guys who played for Homer, except for like Matt's dad and a few others, another real interesting story. I was very fortunate at the end of Coach Marcello's life to sit with Coach Marcello a lot, and I have it on footage. I can make a 6-hour documentary just on Buddy Marcello. That being said, he told me this. He said, I was going to, SLI, which became USL, which is now UL. And he says, I'm sitting over there, and I came home for one summer, and I'm playing football and baseball there. And although the NCAA was not the NCAA back then, you did have rules and regulations. He would sneak and play with the Indians when they didn't have enough players, and they would put another name for him. And he would play for the Indians, right? So that being said, it was very good baseball. It was, and I would have loved to have seen that field. I know there's some of you in here who may have heard the night it burned, because evidently it was a huge event the night the thing burned in 1957, if I'm not mistaken. It was all wood. So.
And we did have a zoo. We had a zoo in Homer. Y'all didn't know this, I bet. A few of you did. Brian just reminded me. At Legion, by the ballpark there, behind Bernard's Barroom, which a lot of you older guys know where that's at, they had a bear in a fence over there. Was it a bear? They had a bear locked up in a fence. That was the zoo. You could go see the bear,
While you're talking about the Legion Park, you're forgetting somebody, because in the 40s, the head coach was Hayes Bonvillain. Did you go that far back? Hayes Bonvillain, because I know, because my uncle was on the team, and the pictures at the museum over here on South Down. But Hayes was probably the first coach of the Homer Indians. Huh?
They were the Buccaneers then, probably.
Buccaneers, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably the only picture we could find is the ones you saw.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Because I remember I have a memory of that, because I was a young kid, maybe 6, 7 years old, and all these kids go outside with a stick, throw a rock up, try to hit it. Well, one of them hit and split my head. Had to run to the big hospital right there on Park, and Dr. Eleanor sewed me up. So I remember that.
So that's what happened? Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. SP. Anybody else? I got the mic over here. Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Pico has a question, I think.
Number 3.
I remember it was on a Sunday afternoon. The Homer Indians played their first game. And the right field was about 200 of a short field. And the guy hit it for a homer, hit a home run in the bottom of the ninth. They won the game. The next day, it was packed.
I bet it was. Thank you.
Shame on me for not realizing with the boxing part, I had information, some of the older folks may remember the name of Dr. Barry Barradale. He coached the 52 USA Olympic boxing team, and it was the first time we'd ever beat the Russians. And he had gold medalists, and basically as a team came home with all the gold. But in 52, and he was a Homer guy, so yeah. And he was real big into the AAU boxing. I remember as a kid watching him referee boxing matches on Saturdays sponsored by Gillette. Because I'll never forget those commercials. Any of you old enough to remember those?
Thank you. This is what we want. I mean, you don't have to have questions. Any memories that you have. I mean, the whole point of all this is to document the history of Terrebonne Parish over the past 200 years in sports tonight. So if you have any stories you want to tell, please let us know so we can get it on record. Thank you.
I'm sure most of you remember Coach Gray Falls. I think his picture was up on the screen earlier. Oh, he was our basketball coach when I was on the team at St. Joe High School in Chauvin back in 1970. I graduated in 71. But Coach Falls was, he was a heck of a coach. And one of the motivational comments that he made to us the night we played Terrebonne High School was, he told us, those people up there, they think if they don't flush their toilets, y'all don't get drinking water.
Just to follow up on Coach False. Coach False was actually, I go do this thing on Tuesdays, a little sports on the bayou. Coach False was there. I thought he would actually be here tonight. He actually spoke at that event, and we were hoping that he could be here tonight. We were hoping that Coach Albert could be here tonight. There were a lot of coaches in the area who were going to come tonight, but because they moved those games, that rain tomorrow night, they couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, I took my Coach Albert bumper sticker off my car, so yeah. Just once again, I want everybody to recognize, all the work and look around this room. I mean, look at all the documents and memorabilia that's come along, and I mean, it took an incredible amount of work to pull this all together. But this is the other thing. And Stan and I, we were talking about this when we were on HTV for Bayou Time. And this is true for all of the subcommittees. I mean, how do you take 200 years and put it into an hour and a half or 2 hours? I mean, that was the biggest challenge of every topic that we had. And look, culture, come on, y'all. It's South Louisiana. It's Terrebonne Parish. I mean, culture and people. We had split it up into 2 meetings. One of them was 4 hours long, and the second one was 7 hours long. And I'm sure they could have gone further than that, right? And sports is the same way. I mean, look around. I mean, it's hard to put it all into an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? So again, I just want to remind everybody that we are going to put out a publication after all this is said and done. So if you have stories, if you have memorabilia, if you have that Indians jersey, let us know. We are not done yet, right? We're going to be putting this out much further. The only thing that's really done is a time capsule. I'm sorry if you got something they want to put in it. It's kind of too late, okay? But everything else, we want more information. Does anybody else have any more questions or stories that they want to share? I mean, remember, this is posterity. We got it recorded. We want to get this information. But if you're shy, or if someone that you know who has that information is not here, that's fine. You know, let us know. Take out your phone and record them on the video. Email us the video at Terrebonne200, the number 200.org. I mean, just send it to us. I mean, we'll take it any way we can get. I mean, this is what we want to do. We want to document everything. I want to thank Mr. Stan again. Yeah. There you go.
They don't even know there was a St. Francis. They don't know there was a St. Joe in Chauvin. Kids from Chauvin don't know there was a St. Joe in Chauvin. They don't know where the tennis courts were. Well, I actually didn't know where Dumas's one was until Mr. Ed said that day. So that being said, that's just my biggest passion, is that the kids don't know. I like what was said, because if y'all could tag this on there, the more, I agree. It's you know, listen, it's 200 years, I get it. But to me, it's like the education that's being lost. And truthfully, and I've said this, and Bobby and I talked about it, we were thrilled when we were kids and you would get out the paper and you played for the Montague Midgets and you saw your name because you scored 4 points in a game, right? That just don't happen anymore. You can't even get high school. I got a call from one of the high school coaches today because he's got a kid signing, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know who you call anymore. I don't know who you, and that's so I don't know where you go forward with that. So if we could preserve that kind of history in some way, shape, or form. And listen, thanks to the schools, they allowed us to bring a lot of this stuff, and I have to return that safely. Anybody who does have things here and you wanted to take it with you when you go, that's fine. But I think my next thing is maybe one day we can, hopefully somebody has the means to find a place to maybe make a small little room museum that you could just go walk through and see some of this stuff.
I think that sounds really good to have downtown. Right? So, anyone else have anything they want to share? Or no? All right. We've been here long enough. I want to, again, thank you all for coming out. I want to thank you for your interest on behalf of Parish President Dove. Appreciate you coming out and sharing with us and learning a little bit more about Terrebonne Parish. Once again, we have 2 more presentations. The next one is at the Civic Center, and it's on seafood. And help me out with the date. It's November, come on, Thursday, the 3rd, a week from tonight, at the Civic Center. And then we have the final presentation on entertainment, which will be back here at the library, and that's December 1st, right here at the library. So want to just thank you all again for coming tonight, and drive safe.